breaking the chart, how to 2x your sales in 60 days or less. Hey, I'm Lisa Zelenak, the founder of Here to Scale, and today we're going to go through some amazingness that I almost forgot about on how we 2x the sales team back in the day. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I forget some of the amazing things that I've created, and simply taking a moment to remember them can be inspiring, no matter what season you're in for life or business. So this is a really cool book that we created. Again, sometimes people will ask me about the books I've published. I forget about this one. So this was inspired that in 60 days or less, I led a sales team and we 2x, not just 2x, but we went from like $350,000 a month to over $750,000. That's pretty significant. So I'm going to read you my three secrets. Each of us created our three secrets on how we did it. So I'm going to read you my three, and that's going to be the extent of this video. And what's really cool, there's actually an intro on each of us. I forgot about this, but I had each salesperson, someone intro someone else. So Brett introduced me, and one of the last lines that he put in here about me was, millions and millions of dollars in sales just happens to be where the dust settles when she leaves the room. Love that, Brett. This is so good. Okay, so three secrets. Lisa's secrets, the first one is BYOB. So how to double your sales in 60 days or less. BYOB, bring your own brilliance. Imagine this. You get a call from your CEO asking you to step in as the sales coach / director. Do you take the job? Well, let me add some context. The sales team is in the middle of one of its lowest sales months in a while. This is the first month that employees at large were not on track to get profit share because of the company's Q1 performance. Two great sales reps that have been with the company for a while decided to leave. The marketing director is brand new because the old director left a few months prior. 6 sales reps, 6 are coming off of performance improvement plans, meaning 6 of them did not hit their quota the month prior, and 2 of them are on their final months to prove themselves. Oh, and not to mention the previous sales director that I knew to be top-notch and everyone loved was asked to step down and would now be a sales rep on the team I was asked to lead. So, do you take the role? Of course not. Which is why I said no thank you to the CEO when it was offered. And thank God I did, because little did I know a global pandemic called COVID, which would leave people all over the world fearful and unemployed, was quickly growing. You see, I believed to do impactful things. I purposely left sales a year prior to coach other clients to start their business. I was coming off of a high. This is the first time I've read this in years. I was coming off of a high from an in-person event I just hosted to help 30 clients start and scale their business. I love my new job, and I was just getting started product managing a fun new PR and speaking course for the company. Leaving something I loved didn't seem like a good move, especially with the circumstances. So I again respectfully declined the offer. Again and again and again. Yet after multiple no's and a couple of arrangements in the agreement, I somehow found myself committed to not just keeping a large part of my previous role as the business coach, but on top of that, also leading the sales team for the next 3 to 6 months. Yes, you heard that right. I was just as shocked as you might be. For many leaders, this might have been the beginning of a slow death, especially because I didn't want to be there. But despite the odds against me, I decided to do the only thing that I knew could turn around every situation for me. Find a way to make this role something I care deeply about. If you're reading this, you already know the punchline. The sales team is incredible. They are the highest caliber of individuals I was lucky to get an opportunity to work with. But from the beginning of the story, it looks like a dark situation. The truth is, in many beginnings, it can look like there is no hope. But looks can be deceiving. What's more important than the looks of a situation is what you decide to do about it. I realized then I would have to bring a greater mission to what I was doing, or as I like to say, I would have to bring my own brilliance. So many people get caught up in a thing. They get caught up in what they're doing and lose sight of the why. I could not control my what, but I did choose to control my why. My why was to inspire and challenge people to live out their brilliance. So now I was faced with a question. How can I make this an opportunity to further what I already cared about? A little side note, I love to ask how? Well, if I could, how would I? How can I make this an opportunity to further what I already care about? I knew what I cared about. Now I just had to answer, how can I make this opportunity as a sales coach and leader about furthering the brilliance of others? Luckily for me, it didn't take long to answer that question. I had one late night conversation with the sales manager transitioning out that probably lasted no more than 30 minutes. For the purpose of this book, we'll call the previous manager the hybrid. I wanted to keep the conversation brief because it wasn't fair to have the hybrid onboard me when he had his own new role to worry about. So he was the director, he was going into becoming a sales rep. He didn't have time to onboard me how to be a good sales director. But the hybrid kept telling me that he felt like he was a failure. Oh, trust me, this isn't a secret. He is very humorous and very vocal and even more brave and vulnerable with the world. So he would tell anyone that he felt like he failed as a sales leader. Obviously, that was not true, but I'm using his words, not mine. It bothered me to no end. The hybrid kept calling himself a failure. And that was all I needed. It was as if in that 30-minute conversation, I had a reason to show up for the team. I went into the call hoping to understand the current systems and processes of the team, but instead I got something much greater, a passion to fight for another human. From that moment, I wanted to do whatever I could over the next few months to fight for this powerful leader that came before me. He was one of the most talented individuals I had come across in a long time, and I didn't want for him more than a second to define himself by the transition. I'd recently read Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, and had always been obsessed with our own power to write our own rules. No longer was it about showing up to get myself through something. It was about how could I get him and the rest of the team through to their brilliance. The truth is, I seem to say that a lot. The truth is, I don't think the hybrid heard much of anything I said that night. It wasn't really about him anyway. Sometimes your truth as a leader, or even as a salesperson when you're leading the prospect, isn't about the team learning. It's about you learning to connect on a deeper level and go all in for others. That night, I felt it. I'm like, this is what I'm here to create. So as a side note, whatever you're leading, connect to something really deep that you actually care about, because that's what got me to show up, freaking show up for that role that I wanted nothing to do with. Really, even when I said yes, I still wanted nothing to do with it. So almost every day for the next 3 months, I woke up with the will to fight for the hybrid, showing him what he was capable of. Maybe you aren't transitioning to a new leadership role, but I would bet you know what it's like to look at a situation that's hopeless. It's harder and it takes more effort, but wow, does it change things when you can bring a greater reason to the work you do. Even if your circumstances are boxed or the box you are placed in looks horrible, if you bring your mission, bring your own brilliance, you can make almost anything incredible. So it seems like I'm just saying that a lot, but really that's it. That is the number one thing in which you create in any role will change the game. Because I had the awareness to ask the question, the answer was in front of me. Give yourself the time and the space to answer the question. Find not just something greater, but someone or something to fight for. That was secret number one. Secret number two, the secret to revenue. Love this one. If I tell you the secret, you probably won't believe it. In fact, there was one time the CEO asked me, hey, how'd you do it? How'd you guys double revenue? I didn't have the heart to tell him this little detail because I honestly didn't think he would believe me. So what's the secret? The fastest way to grow revenue has nothing to do with revenue. I don't even think I ever used the word revenue. Before coming to the team, I don't even think I ever used the word revenue. It actually was a bit of a culture shock for me when revenue became one of our most used words during company meetings. And it makes sense. Revenue is what grows the company. However, I always had a hunch that growing revenue wasn't about revenue. Now I finally had the opportunity to test my belief. As noted earlier, at the beginning of the transition, multiple people on the sales team were on their last chance to turn their performance around. I knew that if they didn't hit their revenue goals month one, they would be off the team. Well, I could have done the obvious, had conversations with these members saying, hey, we need you to generate more revenue. I had a feeling that wouldn't change much of anything. Because the truth is, of course, the truth is more revenue was already what they wanted. It's already what they wanted. Of course, they already know that that's what they want. So telling them isn't going to change anything. More revenue means higher pay, greater commission, higher perceived success, all of the things. So I knew that going in, it would almost never make sense to say, hey, we need you to generate more revenue, because that's obvious. It's like when I was a salesperson and someone would say, hey, go make this sale. I often felt like saying, duh, do you actually think that telling me to make the sale will change anything? Not a chance. So luckily I knew what not to say, but that was hardly helpful. Now I had to find a greater meaning for the team that wasn't revenue. A while back, the CEO rolled out the plans for the company. They aimed to hit 10 million and then eventually 20 million in revenue. I racked my brain to understand how this would be motivating to the individuals. Do people care if we hit 10 million or 20 million or 100 million? I know I didn't, so I figured they didn't care as well. And then it hit me. When I took a second to shift the question ever so slightly, it got me excited every time. Who would you have to become to be the person that leads a marketing team to 10 million? Who would you get to become to be the person that leads the product development team of a $10 million company? Who would you get to become to lead the business development team for a $10 million company? I knew I was onto something. So I sent the CEO my idea. Hey, I think this is how we get people excited about generating revenue. No, if you're giving advice, the only true test of how good your advice is whether or not you take it yourself when given the opportunity. Love that. So now a few months later, my own advice was staring me in the face. I kept processing. What if instead of looking at how to hit a revenue goal, we called the team to new heights? What if we asked who would you have to become in order to hit your monthly goal of 150,000 or 100,000? And so we tried it. We set goals for the month and quarter, not just on revenue, but on who we would have to become. Each person on the team came up with a word, myself included. Unfazable, leader, knight, hybrid, thrive, consistent, poised, relentless inspiration, abundance, and fierce. Instead of just asking for a revenue goal, we centered ourselves on a greater aspiration of who we wanted to become. Once we knew who we desired to become, we could then ask questions like, what close rate does someone that is unfazable close at? And that is how we approach setting our goals. Shout out to the hybrid for leading the team in these sessions. So that's it. You're telling me one word increased your team's revenue in 2 months. No, I'm telling you it changed our revenue and our lives for months to come. Dang. It wasn't just about the word, it was about shifting our focus in all conversations. Yeah. As I had to show up more powerfully, if I was going to expect others to show up more powerfully. Second, it gave me a greater purpose to coach the team to the entire quarter. If unfazable wasn't hitting his numbers, the conversation was no longer, hey, can you get your numbers in? Like submitting his numbers in the CRM. The conversation became about the aspiration to something greater. How does someone who is unfazable show up day to day? AKA, they probably submit their numbers. Because the truth is, oh my gosh, I say this a lot. The truth is, a greater value can always inspire someone to be greater. I'm gonna say that again. A greater value can always inspire someone to be greater. Some of the greatest things you'll do in your career can't be measured right away. I was just going to bring up Mamba mentality, but apparently I did in the book. I learned that from Kobe Bryant reading Mamba Mentality. I was in awe that Kobe aspired to be great simply for the pursuit of being great. It wasn't about the score of one game. It was about the continued desire to be better. If someone on your sales team doesn't hit their revenue goal one day, does that mean they failed? What if their revenue decreased from last month? Does that mean they're getting worse as an employee? I remember having that conversation with my mentor when one of the unfazables numbers were dropping. A greater value gives a greater measurement for improvement. As salespeople and leaders, especially when we focus on pursuing a greater aspirational value, we hold our teams to greater values. All boats rise. While our team doubled revenue, we actually laid the groundwork for months and years of increased revenue to come. Without our greater North Star for success or failure, it's easy to stay small and never rise beyond our current container. No matter what goal you're trying to achieve, I encourage you to look for a greater value behind the goal. You'll know it's a greater value when the focus is on who you must become to hit that goal. Again, is this the secret to double your revenue? Maybe, maybe not. But what I can tell you for sure is that this is the secret sauce that allows me to raise my standard of who I wanted to become. When you show up with aspiration to be great, it will continuously or subconsciously raise the standard for those around you. When we collectively raise our standard and raise our level of being, it will always raise revenue. Yeah, absolutely. Like day in and day out was like, who do I get to become to lead this team? That is secret number 2. And last but not least, this one seems like the most concrete, which I love concrete. Simplify to one thing. If you read the previous sections, attended any of our one-to-ones as a sales team, or even listened to conversations behind closed doors, I know myself so well. You might be tempted to think a lot of this sounds a little too EQ, purpose, and emotion-based to directly impact revenue. Fun fact, I'm a T on the Myers-Briggs, a logical decision maker, which is why when I first transferred into a leadership role, one of the things I looked at was at the logic behind certain processes, one of which was goal setting. Historically, the company is great at setting goals. There are goals and KPIs for almost everything. However, one of the immediate disconnects I saw is how the goals were translated to the team. In addition to having a team revenue goal, individual revenue goals, there were 4 other levels of goals. Company quarterly goal. So, for example, the sales team might have a company wide goal of averaging a team close rate of 27.5%. And there's a company monthly goal, 5 additional team specific goals, 3 individual goals. Plus, we had a company wide critical number that everyone was responsible for contributing to. Let me be clear. I love goals. You challenge me to jump and I'll say how high. But even as I started thinking, how can sales reps balance all of these goals and the tasks they're supposed to do? Seemed like the team was being pulled in many different directions. So I boiled it down. I boiled it down to advice from my good friend Chandler Parag, who once told me, "What are salespeople good at doing?" The answer: selling. Salespeople are good at selling. It's that simple. So let them sell. Remove anything that gets in the way. It was with that thought that our team began to simplify our goals and eventually simplify and eliminate the work required to achieve them. Goals were simplified in 2 ways. First, each smaller goal should have a direct impact on the bigger goal. So quarterly goals, then monthly company sales team goals, individual revenue goals, individual goals. All of those layers we had, by the way, but they all rolled up. For example, when we set our close rate quarterly goal, then the next goal or monthly goal was derived from this question. So starting at the top, what's the quarterly goal? And everything stems down from there. What is the biggest goal that we want to hit that will allow our teams to succeed to hit our quarterly objective? And there, yes. And there, the Quarter Pounder Club was born, and Matthew Mead's famous hamburger emoji was born. This is an inside joke, but the takeaway for you is that all of our efforts as a team were now so aligned that we even had a team-wide emoji to remind us. So our goal was 25% close rate. I think that was like our overall goal. And then everything rolled up there. We got excited. That was our one thing. We had a hamburger emoji, the Quarter Pounder Club. We all got to get a 25% close rate. Yes. Now picture this on each level. We didn't just set 5 team goals. We asked, if we achieve what 3 to 5 goals would give us the greatest impact on hitting our team revenue goal? So any goals that were outside of our main goal, even if it seemed like a good goal, we didn't include. Credit to Kevin Martinetti for teaching me a strong goal setting framework with OKRs. Number 2, we would set goals that we would commit to achieving. So they had to be controllable. This also is key. Prior to coming on board, the sales team would set their own 3 individual goals. A common pattern for individual goals was something like this. Number 1, this is an example of 3 goals someone would say each month. 1, hit $125,000 in personal revenue. Number 2, close at 30% close rate. Number 3, complete 106 appointments. Those seem like good goals, right? Yeah, but no, because basically all you see there is one equation. There's nothing those aren't controllable. 125K in revenue, 30% close rate, 106 appointments, not controllable. So the question was, what are 1 to 3 things that if you completed this month, while it's not certain, it would be a very high probability that you would achieve your revenue goal of 125,000. So if you see that, like instead of that being one of the goals, what I shifted was the team was like, okay, I'm going to close this amount. That's great. But what are 3 controllable things? That became their goals. They were controllable things to hit the 125. So the team's aim was to come up with something controllable that reps would commit to achieving no matter what. So while the revenue goal can't always be a no matter what goal, surely someone can say, I'll complete an average of 5 appointments a day. So that's controllable. I'll complete 5 appointments a day. Because then if I only have 3 completed and it's 3 p.m., I'm going to go find whatever I got to do to get 2 more completed because I will commit to no matter what, completing 5 a day. It could be something as simple as completing your morning routine a minimum of 20 times during the month. So that, like a lot of the team members ended up having like personal goals. Like, well, if I'm going to show up powerfully in business, honestly, one of the key factors is me doing my morning routine every morning. So that became something I would let them put as one of their individual goals. 20 days a month, if not, averaging 6 days out of 7 days, completing my morning routine. Again, almost anything would go as long as the rep believed it was one of the top indicators that if completed, there would be a high likelihood of them hitting their goals. I personally love this because it raised the team's accountability to the standards they would work at as there was more intentionality behind setting goals. So reading this, I don't know if you catch that, but the shift was like, instead of just sharing random goals, it was three things every month, because the revenue goal was pretty much already set, right? Like what they got to hit. But what were three things that each person can control? And therefore, like they got to be green on those no matter what. Did it mean they would always hit their 125 or 250 revenue goal? Not necessarily, but I could hold them to these three controllable things. Because then the way I like to say it now, it's just a matter of you versus integrity. If you can get it down to that controllable of an item, it's just you against your integrity. So great. Okay. Not only do we use the simplification framework in our external goals, but I also changed the framework to simplify even on, yes, even on our one-to-one coaching meetings, because myself and each rep, we only had one goal. What do I mean? Rather than coming to one-on-ones each week with a list of multiple notes or goals to solve, I had the team come prepared with one thing that we could solve during our meeting. I had never seen this done before in one-on-ones, and this is very, very, very impactful. And even now in sales teams, I make this shift with them. So that's right. The goal is not to solve as many problems as possible, but to instead to look at the one thing that if we solved would be a solution worth $10,000 to them. Sometimes people would come with tough and open-ended problems like, how do I generate more appointments? Or how do I increase my close rate? Even those were fun. But as the team got the hang of asking better questions, we would produce much better answers. So this is on the one-to-one, like weekly. I think I did bi-weekly, some people even weekly one-on-one meetings with. Specific questions like, how do I better handle the spouse objection? Or how do I get more people to answer the phone? Or how do I get a better morning routine because it's screwing up my day? We're almost always insanely productive because we actually accomplished the one full thing. So these one-on-ones were so effective. I love effectiveness, and actually started to shift the needle because they were so clear on what they needed to shift to hit the goal. So anyway, seems like the end of secret number 3. Final note, as this chapter comes to a close, the truth is there are so many other secrets I would love to reveal to you. Yes, this is just like a little spark, but maybe that's part of the process. True influence for good is influencing people in ways even when no one knows, and even when you don't get the credit. There are endless things we did as a team to influence and fight for one another, fight for our departments, and of course, fight for our clients that will never get recorded in the books. But that's what makes them so great. Doing things, putting in the work, becoming the version of yourself you want to be, even without getting the credit. The sales team fought hard every day for those couple of months. Every day they showed up powerfully on calls, fighting for their clients in ways that people may never understand or be able to appreciate. Most salespeople are used to fighting with people on things like features or price. But when you fight for someone and take a stand for who they are called to be, this is what the sales team did for their clients. And in turn, this is what I tried my hardest to do every day for the sales team. It wasn't easy. There were a few days I didn't know if I was going to make it, but I kept fighting anyway. Literally, there were days I would go off camera and just be crying because I didn't know. Like I would have to go off Zoom because it was heavy. It's heavy to bear that type of pressure of turning revenue around. But I kept fighting anyway. And in return of fighting for them, I got something so much greater, a better version of myself. I'm so thankful for the 9 people on the team for helping me become a greater version of myself. Fight for others, and you will get so much more than 2x of revenue, but a greater version of yourself. That was one of the quotes I used to say a lot on our sales meetings. We would have daily sales huddles, and I'd say, don't fight. Stop fighting with your prospects. Fight for them. Fight for your prospects. And I would go and listen on their calls and like even be messaging them. Stop fighting with them. Fight for them. Fight for them. So anyway, super powerful. Yeah, if you want to get the book, it's called Breaking the Charts. But the main thing is, I think, again, to just be encouraged by things that you've created in the past. Like there's so much. I'm so passionate about so many systematic things. We did so many sales systems that turned this around. But at the end of the day, it's really about people and really about fighting for people. So if you wanted 2x your revenue growth and like sustainably, that's what I'm most proud of is this company has scaled since. It wasn't just like, oh, like there's like a quick fluke. That is also important. Can they sustain even after you're gone? So yeah, that's what got me into this. And because of that, I didn't mean to, but writing this book, people started asking questions. And pretty soon I found myself doing sales consulting, which then turned into a business. So I'm so excited. I love scaling companies. And thanks for letting me share a little bit of this. This is actually even emotional for me. I haven't read it in quite a bit. So keep scaling, keep crushing, keep fighting for people. and I'll see you in the next video.